Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the DM's Guild adventure Down Came a Blackbird, designed by Stacey Allan for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your DM's Guild shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shout out to Platinum patrons Andrew, Brian, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Crazy Pat, and Nick. And Gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcos de Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, A.K., Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, and Sam. Thank you all very much for your support. So I was a film student in college, and I took an entire class on Alfred Hitchcock. So I'm very well versed in Hitchcock's films, and of course one of his most famous films is The Birds, 1960s something, I believe. Down Came a Blackbird is very obviously inspired by the film, which if you haven't seen, I recommend it. It's one of those, a lot of old movies don't hold up for various reasons, but that one is a really interesting horror movie, I think. It even uses, Down Came a Blackbird even uses the same font, I believe, as the Hitchcock The Birds. And in The Birds, for, I think, no apparent reason, you never learn why this is the case, but this New England town, very much like a Stephen King-esque town, is just assaulted by the local birds. So birds are just kind of a big part of, these port towns, and all of a sudden they just turn crazy violent to where they're literally just like killing themselves by smashing into windows and pecking at people and all this stuff for no reason. They just go crazy and kill everybody. And so it becomes this big kind of almost less of a horror movie and almost more of a disaster movie with, I guess, some horror elements. There's a scene where they have to like board themselves up in the house and the birds are trying to peck to get in and everything. Down Came a Blackbird clearly sees its inspiration from that film, which I like that. In fact, I would love, if I can go off on a rant for a second, I would love if more designers took established, famous movies, plots, and ideas and turned them into D&D. Specifically, movies, plots, and ideas that have nothing to do with the fantasy genre, and then put that into D&D. Because when you create those shared stories that are part of the culture, and then create that story in D&D, immediately all the players are, even if they haven't seen the thing, they're at least aware of it and what's going on, and they can share in that fun storytelling. It works really, really well. I think I made this comment when I reviewed a product that was inspired by The Wizard of Oz. And for that same reason, I really love seeing that. I want to see a D&D adventure that's based on, aliens and Terminator and The Predator. Give me a D&D story that's based on just Jurassic Park. Just rip off Jurassic Park and put that in D&D. That would be amazing. None of those have anything to do with the fantasy genre, but when you can create that stuff and adapt it into D&D, that could be so much fun. And instantly, a lot of the players should recognize that story and can immediately get into it. They know kind of what's going to happen, and it just makes everything that much more fun. And of course, you can create some unique twists and turns yourself. This one, obviously, I don't know if any of the NPCs are actually draw. I think it's all that part is all original. Just the basic idea of birds attacking a town is the only thing, from what I can tell, that's really lifted. Obviously, the Hitchcock version does not have a sea hag trying to perform a ritual to transform a local periton into a humanoid. That is what's going on here in Down Came a Blackbird. This is a third level adventure. Takes place in the town of Saltmarsh, which is of course relevant if you are playing through the Ghosts of Saltmarsh collection of adventures, or otherwise it can be in pretty much any port town village you could use this at. Similar to how the birds could be in any kind of New England town, really. It does have adventure scaling from 1st to 4th level characters. It is extremely well written. It is perfectly organized. Really great artwork throughout. Even has maps that I like, although with a bit of a caveat that I'll get into later on. And I think tells a pretty good story, designed to be fairly short and self-contained, but still have some wiggle room that allow the players to have a little bit of opportunity to role play and talk to townsfolk and everything. So I think it tries to do a little bit of everything and does it pretty well within its relatively short linear adventure. Big thumbs up before I get started on Down Came a Blackbird. So organization-wise, this could be the poster child for how I want anything organized in DM's Guild products. I've reviewed a number of products now from the DM's Guild, and I can't take things like this for granted, which is you start with an overview, tell me exactly what level it's designed for, where it's set. Obviously, assume it's for Dungeons and Dragons because it's on the DM's Guild. I don't always review things on the DM's Guild, but put that thing right at the beginning. Give me that overview. Bam, first paragraph. I need to know where it is, what the event is. It an adventure? What's going on? What the level range is. Then followed up with the background information. I get all the relevant lore and story information that I, as the DM, need to know in order to run this adventure. So in this case, it gives me the fact that there's a sea hag who is trying to perform a ritual to turn a periton, which is it's like a Pegasus. No, it's like a griffin, but instead of a lion bird, it's a stag bird. Which similar to the Winter Wolf, with another adventure I reviewed, I wasn't aware those were anything more than just beasts. But apparently they are. They are actually they have an intelligence of 10, I think, and a wisdom of 12. So they have more mental capacity than some player characters that I'm familiar with. So a good use of a creature that I am not as familiar with, and I think doesn't get maybe as much attention paid to it beyond being like a mount for characters or something. The Periton is an interesting use here. Apparently the Sea Hag can transform a Periton. Apparently the Periton casts a human shadow, which is part of its weird lore, and this Sea Hag is convinced that she can transform this big alpha Periton named Kragan into her unholy lover through this ritual that involves transforming a Periton egg. Well, they were capturing the egg fell into a swampland right near the town. A bunch of kids found the egg, and they've been just kind of passing it around, and they recognize it as this big cool egg, and they want to be there when it hatches. But of course the hag and the Periton have been driven insane trying to find this thing to complete the ritual, so they have begun assaulting this town, and the hag has powers over the birds. She is a bird-themed hag. Literally her entire description, the way she talks, her power sets, everything has to do with birds, so she's got all these bird powers. There's some adventure hooks that are provided to get your players basically to the town of Saltmarsh, although frankly they could just be stopping in and dealing with this mess. And then a nice adventure overview, which gives you, hey, here's what happens in Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, so on, with plot beats for all of those. This is just the perfect way to organize an adventure. I can't stress that enough. Overview, adventure hooks, background, all these things are critically important to how your adventure should start, and this one does a great job of immediately pulling me in, explaining what's going on, and then how I should run it, and the general themes and characters that I can expect to run. The only thing it doesn't do that I would have maybe liked to see is a Dramatis Personae that has a list of the NPCs throughout the adventure, but it does have nice sidebars for all the big ones that are used in Parts 1 and 2. So Part 1, the players arrive at Saltmarsh. They learn about the kids that have taken this egg, and they've been passing it around. They actually save one of the kids, and they learn that the town is being attacked by birds. In Part 2, that night, they can talk, or that evening, I guess I should say, they can talk to various townsfolk. There's a list of rumors they can learn, different minor townsfolk they can talk to, as well as major townsfolk they can talk to, like Bryn Sea Blossom and Wildark Mythkin. These are great names, by the way. In fact, all these names are really good. Bridget Greendew, Chloris Twoclove, Zem Steelcut. These are amazing, amazing D&D names. I love them all. Really, really good role-playing notes. I'm actually going to just straight up read one of these as an example of how well to do a sidebar for which I do see a lot of adventurers do this, where they have a sidebar for notes on role-playing, but a lot of them just do, they list the personality traits, the ideal, bonds, and flaws, and all that. I'm just going to read you what it says for role-playing Bryn Sea Blossom. Bryn is a middle-aged and experienced sailor with olive skin, rugged from a life lived on the open sea. She wears a black bandana and large hooped earrings. Her pipe is used as an occasional pointing aid when she's making a serious statement, but mostly she converses with it in the corner of her mouth. She's hearty, quick to laugh, and isn't easily offended. That's an amazing paragraph that really tells me a lot about this character in as few of words as possible. Absolutely brilliant, and it is like that for all the major NPCs, of which I think there are at least 3 or 4 of, which is really great. I absolutely love that way, that role-playing method. And there's a little quote at the end that all the characters would probably say during their interaction with the players. But at this point, the players should learn a little bit about what's going on. They can rescue the local merchant from some thugs and learn some information from him in terms of the sea hag and the ritual and the fact that a periton is out there. They can save the local veterinarian who has, of course, birds in her care that are then going crazy, and she can offer the bird point of view, I suppose. Holly Love. What is her name? Holly Love Dardusk, another fantastic name. And then it culminates with an actual murder happening while the players are there, and they have to investigate. One of the town guards has perished because one of the hags and the periton have attacked the home of one of the children. Thankfully, the kid wasn't there, nor the parents were actually there. But unfortunately, a passing guard was there, and he was killed. So the players get a chance to actually do the whole murder investigation thing, which is a bunch of skill checks. I really like that there's a little more emphasis on role playing than skill checks here, specifically when they're talking to Bryn. Let's see. Bryn explains she sees bravery and trust as important aspects of any crew and would like to know something interesting about each of the characters. Each character can say their piece, and if Bryn is suitably impressed, she'll offer her services. Even so, Bryn's won't be ready until the following day, which is really nice. So I think instead of making that a skill check, it really draws players into a role-playing situation where every player has a chance to kind of convince her to help them based on the things that they may have done previously, which is really, really great. I apologize if you hear cricket sounds in the background. My toad has not finished her dinner from last night. After they investigate, then on part 3, they have a big town meeting, which there is a map for this. The only 2 maps included, which are both of the big premier set-piece combat encounters, which I think is fine. I do like their maps that are provided. They are player and DM maps. They've got good detail. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down and show you. There we go. The only caveat, as you can see, no color, which is a bummer. I feel like we got like 9/10 of the way to creating the perfect map that I want. I'm actually impressed we got a town meeting map, because a lot of times if there's something complex like a town, we're not going to get a map of it. Usually people will give me like a cave map or something, which, you know, those can be good, but towns can be hard to do in a battle map atmosphere. And this one's really good. You know, it's got a lot of detail. There's crates and there's houses and there's things. There's annotations for the DM. You got the DM and the player map, which is perfect, and this tells you where all the complications can occur. Even elevation changes. It's a fantastic map with the one caveat: there's no color, which is a bummer, because otherwise it would be absolutely perfect. And then here's the Hag Lair map, which is also cool because it's inside of a freaking whale, a dead whale, which is an awesome, awesome idea for a sea hag lair. I love that to death. That's fantastic. Again, really good annotations throughout, and I love this map. I just wish it had some nice color to it, because it would be basically the perfect map at that point. Assuming we got separate handouts of these. I'm actually not sure if they are only embedded here or if they are separate files the players can use, but that would be really good. Really good player handouts as well, since I went ahead and skipped ahead. The same kind of problem where a little bit of color would go a long way, but the fact that these are actually given handwritten, or, you know, the font that looks handwritten notes, to where it looks like they're from, and I love this one from the kid is all misspelled and just looks really, really good. So fantastic visual aids, good maps, good handouts. Why is there no color? Like, give me some good color. I know there's good color. Like, artwork is really good throughout. All that works very well. I want color on my maps. Anyway, part 3, the town meeting. The town gets together to discuss, you know, holy shit, there's birds attacking us. What are we going to do? And the sea hag actually just makes her move. She decides she's fed up with trying to find the egg and just decides to attack the town head on. Swarms of ravens and the actual periton himself as this kind of I guess mini boss fight, really, because it's Periton, I believe, is a CR2, and the players are designed for 3rd level. It does have level adjustments for every single encounter, which is very good. It does the very weak, weak, strong, very strong thing, where it says, hey, you know, if your player's only 2nd level, for example, you can have the hit points and get rid of this feature of the monster, or if they have an extra player aboard, then you can maybe add this extra monster to create that good balance level. So I always like to see that, very much appreciate that. For all of the possible combat counters, which is cool. What I really like about this encounter, though, and something that I think gets missed a lot of times with adventuring, and I guess not every adventuring hero, not every adventuring party are heroes, but something I really love about, for example, the Marvel movies is it really tries to emphasize the fact that the Marvel heroes are heroes. They're not just fighting and punching bad guys. They're actually rescuing and helping people, which I think is what ultimately heroes do. And in this case, the adventurers, the player characters, are given a chance to actually save people during this encounter in the form of these complications. So, for example, one person is about to be trampled because there's a bunch of people everywhere, so somebody can roll a strength check to lift them up as an action. One child got, one elderly woman is lost in the street, so players can help her. There's a boy who's been stranded on a balcony and he's got birds coming after him. All of these are really good complications because it allows, not only is it clever because it uses up player actions during a time when they would be using them to just fight normally, but it does allow them to help people and feel like heroes and hopefully role play their characters, especially if they are lawful good, or at least good in general. Even lawful, I guess, doesn't matter when you're having a bird attack. If you're good, then I think you would help people. And that's a good opportunity to reward players with inspiration too. So I really like that. The complication section of part 3 is a lot of fun, and the actual Periton egg is supposed to hatch during this encounter, which is fantastic because there are different options that players can use from there. Either they can obviously just kill it, or they can try to care for it. They can turn it over to the vet that they helped. All of these things are options. Ultimately, the players should be able to defeat the Periton, who apparently fights to the death. And then the Sea Hag is all that's left. They should have finally learned the location of where she is from all of their different things that they did in part 1 and part 2. And that leads them to a giant whale carcass outside of town that is the Sea Hag's lair. That's a really, really neat idea for a Hag Lair. I think that's amazingly brilliant and clever. She's got a bunch of sea spawn that have different mutilated monstrous parts like tentacles for a lower torso and a beak for a head and all these things that help her attack. Because Sea Hags are spellcasters, so you really need to put minions in front of them in terms of the balance. I was a bit disappointed that the lair is just the single room. As you could see from the map, it's literally just a one-room dungeon boss fight, not even really a dungeon. And I'm not sure how you can create a dungeon out of a whale's carcass. I mean, it's D&D. You can make a whale as big as you need to, I guess. But I was hoping to see just a little bit of a dungeon crawl, not even a big one, and I realize this is designed for more of a one-shot mini-adventure. In fact, it actually says 4 hours. I always roll my eyes anytime somebody tries to give a timestamp to an adventure because, as we know, combat alone can take 1 to 2 hours, any one of those combat encounters. Granted, this is Tier 1, so it's maybe go a little faster. But I was hoping for a little bit of a dungeon crawl here, at least to force the players into using up some of their resources, because as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason why they couldn't long rest between part 3 and then part 4, and so they come in fully rested. I would have liked to see just a little bit, maybe a trap involved and maybe one little mini encounter as the players get into this whale carcass and actually approach the final boss fight. Otherwise, the final boss fight does seem to be very cool. Obviously, she's got her birds with her. She's got this flying rowboat that's like her flying broom, but of course, since she's a bird and nautical themed, it's this flying boat. She can command the dead whale, which is her lair, to dive underwater, which has all these effects. You can see the moving lair hazards, which is a really cool, epic, climactic thing to do. When the players maybe think they've got the upper hand, or even just at the beginning of a fight, if you want to pull it, you're just like, oh, screw it. You guys are going underwater now, and you're getting rocked around, knocked prone, taking damage, getting thrown into nets. Just really, really cool idea here. I absolutely love how that works. Should be a really, really fun, epic boss fight. So I'm very positive on Down Came a Blackbird. Uses a lot of monsters in good ways. There's a trap as the players walk into the murder investigation scene. That like a bird flies out of a portrait. There's a little girl crying. Very kind of a messed up horror moment that I like to see. As the players walk in and try to investigate that, this giant fiery bird comes out. But instead of it being an eagle that has fire powers, it uses the Flame Skull stat block, which is a really good use of the Flame Skull. In fact, I would love to see that used more often too, is original creatures that simply use other stat blocks that players may not realize. So that, if you see a Flame Skull, players might be familiar with what Flame Skulls can do. You see a flaming bird, and you're just using Flame Skull, rolls to do fire rays and stuff. Your players don't know that, oh man, you're going to cast a fireball next turn or something, because you've used a creature in a really interesting way. So I think that's a cool use of creatures, and I really like that they're all listed here and not just annotated to say, hey, Monster Manual page 47 or whatever. They're actually all listed right here in the product, so I can easily flip over and see like, oh yeah, Perytons do have damage resistance to non-magical attacks. I didn't remember that at all. Or the fact that they are surprisingly intelligent. 9 intelligence, 12 wisdom, 10 charisma. Perytons are straight up legit creatures that I didn't realize they were that sentient. Really, really good adventure. Let's go to my pros and cons for Down Came a Blackbird. Pro, well-written role-playing notes for major NPCs. I really, really, really enjoy the fact that I actually just read aloud one of them. They are very well written and really paint a good picture of how to play those NPCs. I think there are only 3 of them here, but those are the main ones that players should be able to converse with. And then there are many like single sentence ones for just the ones that are kind of one-off conversations where players can chat with somebody very briefly. Although if your players go crazy, certainly you'll have to improvise and come up with deeper backstories for the ones that the players happen to just like chatting with. Pro, difficulty adjustments for every encounter, scaling from 1st to 4th level. I do like to see that. I want to see that in every adventure at general level range, and that's why it says it is designed for 3rd level characters. It is optimized for 5 3rd level characters, but designed for first to 4th level characters of multiple party configurations and level ranges and sizes because of that adjustment. So ultimately, you'll have to use your party and see what's going to work best for you, but I do like those adjustments are there. Pro, excellent player handouts and grid maps, with the caveat that I'll get into soon. And pro, dead whale for a sea hag lair. Friggin' awesome. Very brilliant. Cons, the only con that I really have, because otherwise it is a fantastically well-organized, well-written, well-designed adventure with a neat idea. The maps and handouts lack color. So close to perfection on the visual aids. Final verdict. Down Came a Blackbird cleverly adapts a classic film idea into D&D, featuring a conniving sea hag, a violent peryton, and multiple murders of crows. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.